In West Africa, there is a very mysterious place. To be more specific, in Togo. Here, the people believe in voodoo. Mr. Mama himself is from a family that believes in voodoo. He will introduce us to this secretive world. But what exactly do the people here believe in?
Und Voodoo ist dafür da, Ordnung in der Gesellschaft zu bringen und alles, was schlecht ist, zu jagen.
One of the central places for the religion is the Voodoo market in Lomé, one of the biggest voodoo markets in the world. Apparently, here you can find everything that is necessary for a voodoo ceremony, especially dead animals. Gorilla feet are said to enhance your football skills. Vultures have a positive effect on your wealth, and antelopes make you run faster. This is a huge animal graveyard. Everywhere there are monkey, elephant, and hippo corpses. The pungent odor of decay is in the air. For us as visitors, it is almost unbearable. Another widespread opinion. Voodoo followers poke needles into special dolls in order to inflict pain on others. But the dolls you can purchase here look very different to the ones you can buy elsewhere. Joseph, the market's manager, is skeptical.
I don't know anything about this one. I see so that this now, some people do this one also here to prepare some medicine, to do some sacrifice for bad, some sacrifice for good also.
Originally, the dolls had a positive meaning. In the 16th century, conquerors enslaved millions of Africans who then weren't allowed to practice their religion anymore. Therefore, they fashioned small dolls that they could secretly use for their rituals. Also, voodoo derives from the word vodun, which means God.
I show you some voodoo dolls here. We can use for white magic also. Yeah, look this way.
These are for a love charm.
I love you, Michael. You too, you love me forever in my life. I touch you, you are for me. You for my alone for me forever. You do that one, she will be love you forever.
So does this really work? For the answer, we'll probably have to wait and see if the marriage lasts a lifetime.
Only to make some sacrifice with this one and has good thing for good business.
At least the customers at the voodoo market are convinced by the offered wares. They don't only believe in summoning spirits, but also in the special healing powers of voodoo. In Togo, it is common for traditional and conventional medicine to go hand in hand.
Everything for out here now is just for the medicine. If it that sickness is not for the hospital, they will direct you to come in the traditional place here. After, we must take you go to see the voodoo chief of the market. On the chief place, before the chief are going to be prepared the medicine, he is going to be growing the head, the one who bought it. After, they have going to put it under the fire. It should be like a powder. They have going to put the powder, make some vaccination around on your body. 3 times here, 3 times here, 3 times here, 3 times in your back.
The voodoo followers really do cut their skin and rub the ashes of dead animals into the wounds. From a medical point of view, this is absurd. Some desperate customers have just arrived at the market. They are being threatened by a neighboring village and are looking for some items for a protection ritual.
They send them here to come and buy some ingredients to help them. They need something for protection. That's why they send them here to come and buy some ingredients. Take back to the voodoo place.
Their shopping list: half a monkey's head, different furs of feline predators, an owl, and a chameleon, costing them a whopping €230. This is the equivalent to a whole month's pay, so the voodoo charm trade seems to be quite lucrative. The people believe that the spells and charms will protect them, so the official aim of voodoo is to help and protect. But unfortunately, there are charlatans who scare gullible people with black magic. Dr. Mama invites us to witness a traditional voodoo ceremony where people often reach a state of trance. In this ritual, the voodoo priests summon the spirits, but the main focus is on the god-creator Mawulisa. His powers are so great that the believers can't address him themselves. Therefore, in every ceremony, they pray to many different undergods, the so-called voodoos, who then make a connection between the humans and Mawulisa. Here, we are experiencing live how 3 women are apparently being tormented by a voodoo. A mysterious and somewhat terrifying sight. The believers dance ecstatically and seem to not be in control of themselves at all. It is nigh on impossible for onlookers to understand what is happening here. Dr. Mama tries to explain what is going on. We can see her eyelids flutter and her eyes roll back. To us, the women seem completely out of it, almost as if they were drugged. Are there any mysterious substances involved here? Hypnotherapists confirm that a trance can be reached through reoccurring rhythms. Apparently, this is something you can learn to do. The more often you reach a trance, the easier it is to recreate this sensation. These states of trance have also been medically proven to lower the brain frequency. It is a fact. It is possible to reach a state of trance without any drugs. But in this case, we cannot be sure if the dancers definitely didn't use any substances. In Togo, voodoo rituals are not only practiced on certain days of the year, they are a part of daily life. Dr. Mama takes us to another ceremony, and we're interested to see the sacrificial rituals that we have heard about. We are now at the ceremony location, and these are the utensils for the ritual. Will the cockerel survive this? This ritual is for the undergod Kofi. He is being asked to protect the village and bring wealth to the people. In order to summon this voodoo god, the priest needs blood. And this seems to be where the cockerel comes into the equation.
Es kommt darauf an, wie reich man ist und wie mächtig der Voodoo ist und was verlangt. Man kann einen Huhn, man kann eine Ziege, man kann einen Ziegenbock, man kann auch sogar ein Schaf oder ein Rind opfern.
The sacrificed animal is a sort of spiritual nourishment for the voodoo god, and often the congregation eats the dead animal after the ceremony.
Ganz früher gab es Menschenopfer. Zum Beispiel, wenn ein König selber starb, musste er begleitet mit Menschenköpfen, aber heute nicht mehr.
It is a very strange world that we have experienced in this mysterious land. And for the people here, voodoo is an extremely important part of their lives. From Africa, we are traveling on to the USA. Here we are in Kennesaw, Georgia, a quiet town in the southeast of the USA, roughly 40 kilometers from Atlanta, with about 30,000 inhabitants. For the last 30 years, a very special experiment has been taking place here. All the inhabitants have to be armed by law.
All my friends have guns here. It's kind of known that Kennesaw is a gun-toting city, for sure. And I think that just makes it a much safer place.
I'm not out, flaunting my guns or those kinds of things, but I just believe that, it's a deterrent.
So who lives in Kennesaw, a town where guns are carried openly, even in bars, schools, or while shopping? The Woods family have invited us to their home. Both parents grew up here and a year ago had their child here. Father Brian works in IT and always has his 9mm pistol by his side.
There's an old saying that I'd rather have it and never need it than need it and not have it. And that's kind of, I believe they probably stop more incidents than they start, you know. But yeah, I do feel safer. We live in dangerous times. You hear on the radio every single day, there's so much stuff that happens daily.
In this gun-crazed town, this is a completely normal way of thinking, and we will hear it again and again. Because he wants to protect his family, the 38-year-old has a lot more than just a pistol. What we get to see in his cellar is a real arms depot. There are tons of ammunition and 4 assault rifles. This is completely legal in Kennesaw and also very common. Brian is a real gun lover who passionately cares for his babies. But he is not the only gun-crazed person in the family. His wife, Kim, has also been shooting since she was a child.
I keep it in the house with me. Usually if I'm downstairs on my main level of my house, I have it there. If I go upstairs, it goes upstairs with me. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have a small direct sales on the side job, but me and my son, we're home all day, and a lot of times now on the news you hear about home invasions, stay-at-home moms, and that's a concern of mine.
The gun law in Kennesaw is from 1982. At this time, the crime rate and gun control were heated topics. Therefore, a small town in Illinois banned gun ownership completely. And as a reaction to this, the town council in Kennesaw, a very conservative town, decided to make gun ownership compulsory. But there are exceptions. If all residents were forced to own firearms, this would be against the US Constitution. Our next stop is a very interesting shop on the main road. It is run by one of the co-initiators of the gun law. The 80-year-old Dent Myers, and he sells, what else, all kinds of guns, even incredibly old ones from the Civil War. And these souvenirs, t-shirts, baseball caps that say, "It is the law in Kennesaw."
Everybody poo-pooed us. They said there's going to be blood running on the streets, the people shootouts. It's all fun and games for a while, and then they found out how it actually affected everybody. So everybody's kind of for it, then they kind of go, well, we know that.
Yes, in this town there is lots of pride for this unique law.
I think that's very cool. I'm all about it. I have multiples at my home. I have one that I keep in my vehicle.
So you have a firearm in your car right now?
I do.
Could
yes.
you come? Will you show it to me?
For
You don't mind showing me?
No.
Even this is completely legal here. It is possible to have a gun on you at all times.
It's not out in plain view. I have a concealed permit. I'm allowed to conceal it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you open it up here, responsible gun opener. You can see it is unloaded. This is serrated. It has a wax center, so when it enters somebody, it's going to do maximum damage. Just, I don't want to have to shoot twice, basically.
Thanks to the law, about 90% of the residents of Kennesaw own a firearm. But does this really make the town safer? What do the police think about this? Officer Kiefer takes us out with him on patrol.
You may want to think twice before you enter someone's home in the city of Kennesaw to harm that family, because they may own a firearm and may be trained with that weapon. And if I was a criminal, and common sense would tell me that I'm going into a city where the majority of the people own firearms and train with firearms, that if I go into that home, that there's a possibility I'm going to get shot at, and I may think twice and go to the next city over.
So the police too believe in the deterrent hypothesis. But the truth is that in the whole state of Georgia, the crime rate has dropped in the past few years, without compulsory gun laws for citizens. Our question is if the gun legislation could not become a problem.
If you're going on a call and there's domestic violence, does it worry you that there might be guns in the house?
That's always in the back of my mind. I presume every call there to be a situation of violence with a firearm, regardless if I'm going to a home or not. Most people that own firearms own them for a law-abiding reason.
Just like the Woods family, who shouldn't really have to be concerned about violent crime.
That's right.
In this affluent town, there is almost no crime. And it's been like this since before the gun ownership law was introduced. Statistically, it is far more dangerous to keep weapons in the house with children, just like the family's 1-year-old son.
I'm not going to hide it from my son. I'm going to let him know that these are tools. It's no different than a hammer or an axe. At this age, I wouldn't give my son an axe. It's just as dangerous, but it's just a tool. I'll take him out shooting a gun like that probably when he's 5 to 6 years old, somewhere in that age range.
Like every week, the family is on their way to the shooting range. There are 4 of these ranges in the Kennesaw area, and even on a Monday evening, it is very busy. It is very clear that in this gun-crazed town, there are many shooting enthusiasts like Brian and Kim. The shop next door sells about 150 handguns and rifles per week. Business is booming, and the market seems not to have been saturated yet. 1 hour of shooting costs $15, and you have to bring your own ammunition and weapons. But here, of course, most people have them at home anyway. Brian's son is watching from outside, and he's already gotten used to the noise. Dad's favorite gun to shoot is his self-built $3,000 assault rifle. After a few rounds, it's Mummy's turn. But of course, she chooses to use her own pistol. The 32-year-old grew up in Gun City and has been shooting since she was a child. So it's no surprise. 3 shots, 3 bullseyes.
Yeah, family time for us is shooting together. My mom, my dad, my sister, brother-in-law, my sister's kids, my son eventually one day we'll all shoot as a family, and for us that's been quality time.
As an interesting fact, the name Kennesaw derives from the Cherokee language and means graveyard. From the USA, we are traveling on to our next mysterious destination, which lies in Ethiopia. Dazzling colors and surreal formations, the Dalol, a fascinating display of nature that only happens here, a mysterious and dangerous place in the salt desert of Ethiopia. We're meeting Yerga, our guide for the next couple of days. Without a knowledgeable local and plenty of water, shooting in the desert would be impossible.
Yes, very good, very good.
With 140 liters of water in the trunk, there's hardly any space left for our equipment. Yerga is 33 years old and has been guiding tourists to the Salt Plains for years. This region in the northeast of Ethiopia is his home. We also have 2 drivers and a cook with us.
Name is Plenty. You're for the good cooking. Yes. So for how long will be the first drive now? We go to Bahale?
Bahale. It's about an hour and a half. And then we drive. We stop there for processing the papers where we get from Samara and Addis, and then we get the security guard and the local leaders. That's in the desert, and usually in the desert things are a little bit complicated.
Complicated could be the correct word. As part of the preparation, we had to get lots of different permits so that we'd be allowed to shoot in the desert. Our journey to the Gateway to Hell begins in Mekelle in northern Ethiopia. From here, the Dalol is 174 kilometers away. This doesn't sound like much, but in Africa, this can easily become an adventurous journey. We should reach our first stop, Berchale, in about 2 hours. With each kilometer behind us, the landscape becomes more barren and the temperatures are rising. It's no surprise that soon we bump into some camels, which are the most important mode of transport for the locals. We've reached the small town of Berchale, which is really more of a village, but it has its own chief of police.
This has to be like in 3 copies. One has to stay with the village chiefs, and the other copy will go to the police stations, and the third copy will be with us.
The tourists are the most important source of income here. The chief of police seems to have taken this to heart and suddenly wants more money than previously arranged. A policeman has to accompany all tourists going into the desert. But of course, this service is not free of charge.
I discussed a lot.
Okay.
Of course, it's a kind of fight.
Yes.
And I paid them like 500 a day.
Here, this is a lot of money. 20 euros is almost the average monthly wage. Then, on the right-hand side, we see the Ale, an active volcano. It is very significant for the desert.
Drive to park.
Here we see a nomad village by the side of the road. These people make their money with tourists too. For the next 2 days, this will be our base camp. Simple huts are very typical for the region, as everyone sleeps there or outside under the stars. This mysterious place with its vivid colors is right in the middle of the salt desert. 1,200 square kilometers of salt. But how did this vast plain come to exist? This area lies below sea level and is close to the Red Sea, which has flooded the region multiple times in the past thousands of years. The extreme heat then evaporated all the water, and all that was left was the salt. And this is where we want to go. This part of the region is called Dalol, but the locals call it the gateway to hell. Acid splutters from the ground, and temperatures of up to 60 degrees are common. One of the most extreme places on Earth, dangerous and fascinating. On this journey, you are sometimes even faced with obstacles that weren't there a few days ago. Like this lake, for example.
Wow. I thought in the desert there won't be any rain.
It happens sometimes. And then due to the rain, the heavy rain yesterday, and this become like a kind of lakes. It's not a permanent lake, it's like just a day or a couple of days. And then it's windy from the north to the south, and that's pushed the water all the way down. So we probably have a chance to drive to the sulfur tomorrow on this part of it.
So this is also salt water right now?
Yes, let's taste it.
Can you just taste it?
Let's taste, yes. It's very salty.
Oh, this is salty. Oh.
The ground is so salty that even rainwater turns into salt water. The desert is flooded about every 4 months, and all the tracks in the ground vanish. This is very dangerous, as the drivers can then easily lose their way. So we head back to the base camp in the hope that tomorrow the water will be gone. It is the next morning. In order to avoid the sweltering midday heat, we're heading off early. We have a 2-hour drive ahead of us, although only a couple of kilometers are between us and the Dalol. Even if, after the heavy rainfalls, the water hasn't gone completely, we still want to try our luck. At walking pace, we start making our way towards the Dalol. To be honest, this is quite an absurd sight. We are in the middle of the desert and are driving through clear, calm water. Then we can see the first sheets of salt on the ground. Some of them are multiple meters thick, but in other places again they are so thin that we could fall through. The salt desert, a fascinating sight. Around us, nothing but salt. But even this area is inhabited by nomads, the Afar. The salt is their livelihood. Jörger takes us to meet them.
Actually, this is the place where they do like salt mining in traditional ways. And they do it like every day.
The nomads have been living and working in this region for hundreds of years. With an axe, they break large blocks out of the ground. These salt plates are broken down by the men and then sold at market as table salt.
And it costs just 4 just in here in the areas. But once you go and then use like a transportation to the nearest village called Berahale, or you get the permission paper, and it costs like 20 birr.
20 birr?
Yes.
Because of middlemen, the price rises again. In the capital, Addis Ababa, one salt plate already costs €2. For transporting the heavy salt plates, the Afar use their camels. How hard is the work at around 40 degrees?
Your name?
Aina Ala. Ahmad Aina Ala.
Ahmad Aina Ala.
Aina Ala.
Okay.
With primitive tools, the Afar managed to shape almost every salt block to the exact desired shape.
Oh.
Good? No good?
Good.
Good? No good?
Good.
Good? This is exhausting. Like just for, like doing it for like 1 minute.
Back-breaking work, but the Afar do this daily. In the desert, at up to over 40 degrees in the glaring sun, with no shade at all. For us, our journey continues on the crusty salt plains that are sometimes as sharp as razors. This is quite a hazard for the tires.
This is because of the sharp salt?
Yes.
The hard, sharp salt has cut the tire of our support vehicle, so the soldiers quickly become the car mechanics. Here in the desert, it is often necessary to improvise, but we don't want to lose any time and carry on with just one car. The security has to come with us, so they have to sit on the roof. After just a few meters, the next surprise. Jürger shows us one of the lowest points in Africa. This basin is 160 meters below sea level, and volcanic activity in the area makes this liquid, consisting of salt water, sulfur, and potassium carbonate. We now have a 45-minute walk ahead of us, all uphill. And the temperature has now reached 44 degrees.
Let's go. Okay, let's go.
Loaded up with water bottles and the camera equipment, we begin our ascent. Behind this hill, we are supposed to finally find the Dalol and its vivid colors. Past surreal salt formations, we make our way in this dangerous terrain. One of the first signs, a bubbling spring between two broken salt plates. The cavernous ground is treacherous, but it was all worth its while. We have arrived at our destination. In the basin, the heat builds up. The smell of sulfur lies in the air. A sea of color that only exists here. An absolutely unique place. And this is how this phenomenon occurs. This region has been flooded by the Red Sea over and over again. Underneath the surface of the Earth, the groundwater comes into contact with hot magma and is pushed upwards out of the ground. At the surface, the water evaporates and only leaves the salt behind. While the water is transported upwards through the Earth, it washes minerals out of the volcanic stone. And this is the reason for the vivid colors and the acrid acids.
That also makes special the areas, and then people say like it's another planet.
So, and is it like dangerous? What if happens if I can just go and jump in there?
If you put your hands or just some parts of your body in it, it can burn you very easily. Okay. I know a guy who burned out of it.
Okay.
And he walked on top of it and then it get crushed. And he didn't know exactly whether it's cracking or not. And then he put his feet underneath.
Oh.
And then he been in the hospital for 2 months.
So that's definitely not a good idea then. Nevertheless, this place is still fascinating. Scientists once tried to determine the acidity levels, but the measuring devices couldn't display the figures anymore. Despite this, some companies still tried to commercially extract minerals from the ground here. In the distance, we can see derelict houses and steel constructions that are witnesses to their failure. In the 1960s, multiple firms wanted to mine for potassium carbonate, which is a main component in fertilizers, but the surrounding conditions were too harsh and they gave up again. This is also the place where the official heat record was measured that hasn't been beaten to this day. It lies at a consistent temperature of 43 degrees Celsius during the day and during the night. We too are leaving the Dalol, one of the most extreme and mysterious places on Earth. From Ethiopia, we are traveling on to Myanmar. This mysterious place is probably the most unusual oil field in the world, and it is extremely dangerous. And all this just for a few drops of crude oil. Today is Myad Shi's big day. This is the Minla region in central Myanmar. It is a poor region where agriculture is the main source of income. But a few soldiers of fortune are on the hunt for the big bucks and are searching for oil. It is back-breaking work for the almost 10,000 oil hunters that haul one of the most important commodities out of the ground, almost purely by hand. Myad Shi only lives a few hundred feet away from the oil field in his little hut that he shares with 8 other workers. A year ago, he moved here in order to follow his dream of becoming an oil hunter, and today his dream could come true. Myad Shi himself has worked his way up from a simple worker to an independent oil hunter and now has 8 employees. Together with them, he lives, sleeps and eats here. To date, Myad Shi hasn't made the big oil find yet, but this could change soon. Today is the day he finds out if his latest drilling endeavor was successful. While his employees are already going over to the drilling tower, Myad Shi has to go to his old oil well. But it isn't a very lucrative one. He can only collect oil once a day after it has gathered overnight. A simple but ingenious method to collect oil. Myad Shi's most important tool, a motor that operates the winch. The special thing about the region surrounding Minla is that while crude oil reservoirs are usually hundreds of meters beneath the ground, here the black gold lies just 150 meters beneath the surface. Down there, Myad Shi's plastic pipe fills up with groundwater and crude oil. He then separates it by hand at the surface. This method of oil production carries quite a risk, as crude oil contains carcinogenic substances such as benzene. Every drop is valuable and worth money. While Myachi is collecting his oil pipe by pipe, 100 meters away, his workers are drilling a new well for their boss. For Myachi, a new well carries substantial financial risk. He had to pay $600 to the private landowner in order to be allowed to drill in this area. And his employees cost him another $350. He has spent all this money without even knowing if there will be any oil in the ground. In his head, Myachi has almost reached his goal, because all around the drill hole, a thin layer of oil has begun to form. Environmental protection is not a big concern here. A few times a day, private oil traders come to the field to collect the full barrels. After 3 days of drilling, it is finally time. The well is finished, but every drill is luck of the draw. In total, Myachi has already lost $6,000 through unsuccessful projects, but he has made the same amount of money through productive oil wells. On the basis of the soil that is stuck to the drill head, Myachi collects clues as to whether he has struck oil. Myachi is thrilled. If he strikes oil today, he won't have any financial problems for a while. Through the holes in the conveyor pipe, the oil and groundwater will later flow into the well. Despite all the risks, a job in the oil fields is by far the best paid job in the region, and well owners like Myachi can technically make hundreds of dollars every day. In comparison to that, the average income per capita in Myanmar is about $900 per year. Myachi does not only have a lot of responsibility towards his family, but also to his workers. If a new well fails, he cannot immediately employ them again because he doesn't have the money to do so. This is the reason for the high hopes that everybody puts into each well. More and more groundwater is spouting from the hole, but no sign of any oil yet. Hours pass, and still just water. Myachi tries to keep his spirits up, but his team are suspecting that this is a bad sign. The oil is so impure that he won't be able to separate it from the water and mud. From his experience, Myachi knows that he hasn't struck oil, if even after hours of work, he can't extract any pure oil from the ground. Myachi makes the only valid decision for himself and his team. He closes the hole. Now he only has to deliver the news to the workers. They haven't found any oil, and the past day's work was all for nothing. Although, of course, they are getting paid, the employees are extremely disappointed. And so the search continues in the mysterious oil fields of Myanmar. The next place on our journey is well known for all the wrong reasons. Fukushima. In 2011, a reactor accident occurred here in the local power plant. A nuclear catastrophe with serious consequences. For most, it is still a mystery as to how life continues here after the disaster.
This park is decontaminated. It's officially clean.
Abandoned pets. Fear of radioactively contaminated food. And concern about the long-term effects of the catastrophe.
We have to continue to examine the level of contamination.
Why?
Why? Because the food, some food was still contaminated.
A life in cramped emergency shelters.
年寄りは帰ったんですよね。でもやっぱ子供には良くないからうちらはこっち側に避難して新たな生活。だから子供たちも不安だったと思うし。
Since the tragedy of Chernobyl, we know that the effect on the residents where such a catastrophe has occurred lasts for many years. Here in Tokyo, everything seems as if nothing had happened. But what is the situation outside of the capital? The city of Koriyama lies in the prefecture of Fukushima and is about 60 kilometers away from the reactor where the accident occurred. The contamination was especially severe there in 2011. Once we have arrived in Koriyama, we notice measuring devices in multiple places. These machines measure the radioactivity in the area. And at the moment, they are giving the all clear. All the readings are within the norm. But how is this possible after what happened? Radiation expert Joe Moros is skeptical about these measuring instruments. He has asked us to meet him in this public park so that he can show us these benches. According to Joe's Geiger counter, they are heavily contaminated. The measuring results skyrocket.
The company that was hired to decontaminate the park was hired to do the stones and the sidewalks, but not the benches. The benches are apparently controlled by a different city department, and they would have to hire a crew to come and clean the wood or change it.
Joe Moros knows exactly what he's talking about. The engineer has been living and working in Japan for 25 years and is an expert in the field of radiation measurement. But why are the official Geiger counters showing normal levels of radiation?
They're generally pretty accurate. When we put our sensor next to them, our readings agree. But if you go nearby, you find sometimes a very different reading because the places they've put these are the places where they typically have cleaned up.
It is not life-threatening to sit on these benches once. Therefore, it is possible for Joe to work with just his bare hands. But if one was exposed to this level of radiation for a prolonged period of time, it would have a serious effect on your health. Because the engineer doesn't trust the official bodies in Japan anymore, he and his team have developed an affordable Geiger counter for private use. The idea behind this is for people to measure the radiation in their homes or to attach it to their cars and collect data while running their daily errands. The collected data is then uploaded, and by doing this, a contamination map is created, which is independent from the official data provided and much more accurate too.
The government put out measurements for like Tokyo and Fukushima, but in my case, I live in Chiba and there was no information for my city, so I started measuring myself. And then we found out everybody wanted to know not what the reading was nearby or in their city, they wanted to know what the reading was at their house or in their street right where they're walking.
Joe Moros takes us to the now ghost town of Minefield, which is located about 20 kilometers from the reactor. We arrive in the ghost town. Up until November 2013, this was a locked-off, no-go zone. But now, the radioactivity levels have sunk to a level that makes it possible to spend a couple of hours here. Everywhere, it is possible to see how rapidly the people had to escape. They had to leave all their belongings behind and have, to this day, for fear of radioactive contamination, not retrieved them. This restaurant was additionally destroyed by the earthquake. The fridge is still full of food supplies. In this preschool, we find a calendar from the day that time stood still. It was the 11th of March, 2011. It is no surprise that the people in Fukushima, even outside the evacuation zone, are worried, especially for the well-being of their children. There are too many opposing opinions about the effects of the reactor accident. In this hospital, children from the region are regularly checked for radioactive contamination for free, and if need be, also treated. One of these children is Toshia, who has come to the hospital with his preschool teacher. The nurse measures the radioactivity on the skin and on the hair with a special Geiger counter, but she finds no increased levels of radioactivity. This means that Toshia has not been in contact with contaminated materials, but the risk of this happening is ever present. But there is another hazard lurking: severe cell damage by consuming radioactively contaminated food. And this is why the little boy has to spend 4 minutes in this so-called baby scan, which was especially designed for testing children. So that it's easier to lie still, Toshia is allowed to play on the computer. And it seems to be working. The high-tech machine performs a so-called gamma spectroscopy. Luckily, the results are normal.
We performed over 50,000 examinations, and maybe 1/3 are children. Half a year after the disaster, when we started the examinations, we found that people in this area were exposed to radiation. The detection rate of radioactive materials showed a clear decline. We have to continue to examine the level of contamination.
Why?
Why? Because some food were still contaminated.
Radioactivity in food is a daunting topic. How dangerous is the food here? The production and sales ban on food from Fukushima has been loosened now, but the information for the public is, as always, contradictory. We buy some products from the region and hand them into a laboratory. Here, the public can hand in their food and get it tested, free of charge. With this special device, the Atomex, the amount of radiation in the food is determined. For the test, we have to cut up some of the products. A standard examination just from the outside with a Geiger counter is not sufficient when it comes to food. The next day, we get the results back. None of the purchased items showed any signs of radioactive contamination.
一方ですね、野生のキノコ、あるいは野生のイノシシ、野生の鹿、鹿肉、こういうものにつきましてはチェルノブイリの例と同じように放射性セシウムの汚染が高い傾向にあります。したがってそういうものは定期的に自分で測りながら食べるということが健康管理上大事だと思います。
We are left with an uncomfortable feeling, especially regarding the fish, with it being one of the main staple foods in Japan. There are often reports that radioactively contaminated water from the reactor spills into the sea. What the long-term effects will be is impossible to say at the moment. Back to Joe Moros in the ghost town of Minefield. The engineer has to check the sensor that his team has placed here to measure radioactivity. Joe doesn't trust the readings provided by official bodies. The equipment seems to have failed and is sending false information. Joe immediately discovers what the reason for the problem is.
So we wanted to make sure that the sensor was actually working and it wasn't that something had blocked it or some animal had chewed through the wires. But it's pretty clear now that I'm here that it's just all this snow is so thick that it's covering the ground and shielding the radiation and making the reading read a little bit lower.
On our way back to the car, we meet a human being after all. Builders are tearing down a radioactively contaminated building. We are told that wood isn't as easy to clean as stone, for example. The contaminated waste is taken out of the city by the lorry load. At the moment, the Japanese government is planning to permanently block off one of the ghost towns and store all of the polluted waste there. The owners of this furniture took everything outside to be collected, but it seems as if halfway through they gave up.
I have seen families where the father wanted to take everything with them, and the mother was just like, no, leave it behind. We've got to go. Let's just leave. And that kind of dynamic it's a very dynamic situation when you're evacuating. And some people, they want to keep their things, but they want to go, and they're torn between those questions.
We are visiting the Endo family, who experienced exactly this situation. They too had to flee from the radioactive radiation. They have been living in an emergency shelter for years, and for the parents, everything is about their children. The father doesn't want to be filmed. He is ashamed because of the cramped living conditions.
年寄りは帰ったんですよね。でもやっぱ子供には良くないから、うちらはこっち側に避難して。新たな生活だから子どもたちも不安だったと思うし、子どもらは4回も転校してるんですね、学校を。初めは体育館にいたから体育館の隣にあった学校に行ったりして、でまたこっち側に別な学校行って、ほんでここに来てまた学校行って。
The Endo family were very unlucky. They lived just outside the official evacuation zone and were therefore not able to get compensation from the reactor's owner, TEPCO. All the others in the settlement at least get a monthly payment of €1,000 as recompense.
もう決まったことですからって言われて、もう除外されてしまって、でもちょっと今まで住んでた自宅そこからちょっと歩けば広野町ってあるんですよ、が出てるとこ。そこから本当にトンネル一つなんですね、うちは。
160,000 Japanese people had to leave their homes after the reactor catastrophe, and a large proportion of them are still waiting to be rehoused into real homes. But the authorities don't want to set an official time frame on when this will happen.